Well, it was that, and the bed that they had up there was really a kind of a the memory foam type thing put on top of it, which is if you're is doing that, for him, it's going to put a lot of pressure on that issue. So that might have been part of it. The two things combined, because if you're laying like this, it pushes you've actually got the natural curve going this way. Right. So when it goes the other way, it then pushes all the disc and all that stuff back, and it pushes it back against the nerves and everything. And so that's the thing that's kind of he's going to need to be working on. But if he was doing that and it was slowly doing that, just get pressure back on his spine. So.
Well, a new pad is easier
than true, and that was just stuff that was put up at the condo there, his condo. Yeah. So it wasn't his home bed. So I think the combination of those two things set it off, and so you got to settle it back down and start over almost.
How is our wounded warrior?
Said no better this morning.
Is it a back issue? Or? I had a back problem from.
I was wondering on that.
Good morning. I'm going to call to order the public meeting for March 13th, 2018. To my left is John Christopherson, the Deputy County Attorney. To my far right is Jolene Sanchez, the Assistant Clerk to the Board. Ms. Sanchez, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Sharp?
Here.
Commissioner Conti?
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Baker?
Here. Commissioner Sharp, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. Are there any modifications to the agenda this morning?
There are no modifications today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sharp, seconded by Commissioner Holland. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. We have one set of minutes to approve. This is from February 20th, 2018, and we had a full board. Excuse me.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, there's been a motion by Commissioner Conti and a second by Commissioner Holland. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or objections? Seeing none. This is the time when we allow citizens to comment. If there are any citizens in the audience that would like to comment on anything that's not on the agenda, if you'll make yourself known to me. and by raising your hand or letting me know. I don't see any citizens wanting to address the board, at least on things that are not on the agenda. So the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Holland, seconded by Commissioner Conti. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or objections? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. We have one general business item. It is a public hearing, and this is for case number Z17-002, South Gun Club RV Storage Specific Development Plan. Our presenter this morning is Molly Orkild Larson, and our attorney is Robert Hill. Mr. Hill, would you please set the foundation for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This application for a specific development plan for an RV storage has been noticed in accordance with the code by publication in both the Villager and the I-70 Scout by mailing to the adjacent property owners as specified in the code and by posting of the property as specified by the code. The board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Good morning.
Good morning.
Orkild Larson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Molly Orkild Larson, Senior Planner with the Public Works Department. What's before you this morning is the South Gun Club RV Storage Facility. I have, before I go any further with my presentation, I did put 2 emails in before you that came in after the staff report was submitted. So I wanted to make sure that you got those. Both those emails are in opposition of the application. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to PUD to allow an outdoor storage facility for recreational vehicles and boats. The property is located west and adjacent to South Gun Club Road, north of East Alameda Avenue, and east of E470. Staff is recommending approval with conditions and finds that this application does meet the applicable standards. On January 16th of this year, the Planning Commission recommended denial 4-2 based on the findings that the project wasn't compatible with the surrounding area. Traffic on South Gun Club would be impacted by turning vehicles into and out of the site, and it didn't comply with the comp plan employment land use category. At the hearing, at the Planning Commission hearing, engineering staff did discuss the possibility of having a right-in, right-out only for this facility, and the applicant was amenable to this to resolve the issue of turning vehicles crossing traffic into the site. Staff has added that as a condition of approval to remedy this situation. The applicant does have his representative here to do a PowerPoint and go into more detail on this project. So I'm going to turn it over to him and have him go into more detail on it. And then afterwards, if you have questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So I'll turn it over to John Olson. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, if you'll come forward and if you'll state your full name and address for the record, please.
Let me adjust this real quick. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is John Olson. I'm a planner and landscape architect with Altitude Land Consultants. Our address is 3461 Ringsby Court, Suite 125, and that is in Denver.
Thank you.
See if I can mess this up, the pointer. Okay, so the property, as mentioned, is a 5-acre site. Or, I'm sorry, it's a 10-acre site. 5 acres of it's usable, as you'll see in the following illustrations. There's significant constraints in the property with floodplains, etc. We are proposing, it is currently zoned for detached single-family residential in its zoning as A2. We are proposing an RV boat storage facility to meet not only the local demands of the area, but the overall regional demands. We also have our company also has a Colorado Springs office, and I've recently been told by friends, oh yeah, it's tough to find storage, and many of them actually come from Colorado Springs up to Denver to actually utilize in order to get on those wait lists, etc. Let's see here.
I believe you do have to point. The computer is underneath the
Down here?
dais.
Right there.
Okay.
All right, this is like a video game. Hold on. Let me see here.
Thank you. Jeff Strauss is our AV technician expert.
Fortunately, I don't have too terribly many slides, so.
While we're waiting.
We do have one question already, so while we're waiting for that.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm. You mentioned a wait list. Is there currently a wait list for people who are looking to store RVs or boats in the area?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
It's here locally.
Just to confirm. And do you have any idea how large that wait list is?
I do not. I've heard third-hand or second-hand from friends in the Colorado Springs area that they can't even find a place there. Therefore, they're coming up here to Denver, the Denver Metro. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, project team. So as mentioned, I'm the planner for the project. The broker, we don't have our broker here. Civil engineers, Radiant Engineering. Chris Patton, the developer for the property, is behind me here. The owner is not in town, so Chris is to purchase the property, and I believe there's a contingency basically on approval of.
That was one of my questions, so thank you.
Here is a timeline, and I apologize, you may have to squint. It's been a very long time. So May 2016 is when this basically all started up. The first drawings went into, I'm going to get to some of the stuff that you really want to know. First drawings went into Arapahoe County for the PDP process in January of 2017, so a little over a year ago. That goes through a long process, and of course there's still pieces beyond this, including the ASP, which goes and gets into the further design. The first planning commission hearing, and I say the first planning commission hearing because it ended up being continued after we got through the meeting. It was voted to continue that meeting to a later meeting. That was in December. The second meeting was in January, and then here we are today on the timeline. This is just the general designation of how this works with transition and how zoning works and where you want to have things work. Co-located to each other. This is a graphic that I provided for you that, because I couldn't really find a good kind of land use of showing what's the current land use in the area, so I created one for your needs here. Low density residential is generally across Gun Club Road. There is the Gun Club directly south of this property. And then there's one lone single family home to the north of the property as well. You'll see in red there the commercial center. That's actually in the city of Aurora. And it's a recently, and I believe, approved project going to the north. You can see here it's a fairly intense for commercial, large grocery store, pad sites, etc. Here's the site here. Let me see if I can point. I guess I got it highlighted, so we're good. But basically, we're looking at a very long, linear 10-acre site fronting onto Gun Club Road. E470 is to the west, and the Gun Club, again, is directly to the south. You can see, if you squint, that there is the Gun Club's right here. So we do have some firing ranges right here firing out this way. I am not an individual who goes to gun clubs, but my understanding is that these ones that are pointing actually this direction are shotgun ranges as well. Give you some information on that. This is MU zoning in Arapahoe County directly to the east of the property. It's assumed to be some sort of residential use, whether that is the residential use of this slide where we're looking at maybe 6,000 square foot lots, or if we're looking at the larger low density residential here. Zoomed in just a little bit closer, you can see here's the house I referenced, which I think you'll see here in the next slide. It's either within or close to. Nope, not that slide, not that slide. There's a floodplain slide somewhere in here where we're talking about how the floodplain works, and I saw Chuck Haskins is here as well to discuss that for you. The commercial development is directly to the north of that. The A1 zoning directly to the east is owned by the is CDOT or E470 basically for their right-of-way space. And going back to the site now, so you can see here we have a large open space in this area, and that is in response to the floodplain, so it's basically an unusable space. We do have an access drive that comes into that. Requirements of that, I believe, are 20 feet wide. We are showing a 25-foot wide as well as a turnaround area, which I'm sure you all have plans of how that begins to work. It is a gravel entry drive, and that is per requirement due to the fact that it's going through the floodplain. I always think it's helpful to show kind of little circles, show proximities and distances to everything so that you kind of get a better feel for it, because it is a large 10-acre site. We do have quite a bit of land. So the closest from this point of where the RV boat storage would be to the first single-family lot, aside from obviously this one, in the Thunderbird Estates is 775 feet. To the closest one at the intersection of Alameda and Gun Club, we're looking at 650 feet. Those radiuses are 500-foot circles. Also helpful, I found in a lot of cases, so that you can see views and visibility and what kind of impact we're actually talking about. It would have been more helpful if I owned an RV and I parked an RV on the property for the day. Might have scared people if I did, frankly, but I pulled my car out there. So I parked it approximately right in line with this outbuilding. So that in the next slide, you can begin to see how the impact and where the site is. I've taken a stab at locating where this is, how wide this thing is from different corners. So this is from Gun Club Road, visibility. So you can see as far back as that is set back already in this image. I do want to mention that one of the things that we have proposed in the design, or the intention of the design, is that all of the easternmost RV, it's RV and boat storage. So the easternmost vehicles that we parked, where my car is, would be the boats. So those are lower profile vehicles, just to help decrease that visual impact. Here's a look from Alameda and Gun Club, looking over. You can see the significant berm here is for the Gun Club itself. So back behind it, my car's in there somewhere. I don't know that you can see it over the berm, actually. A little bit further up, closer to where the actual house is there, you can see again how the site begins to lay out. Visually, these buildings here are, 15 to 20 feet tall. So visually, an RV would be lower in those. A little bit further, this is going into Thunderbird Estates. I walked the kind of the rural road that's there and showed some images back. So this is from 127 Coolidge. Again, you can see my car in this one. It's right there. So you can see it is clearly just a foreground kind of conversation when it comes to visual. You also have some trees in the foreground far beyond where you'll have actual mountains. This is getting back toward the Gun Club Road at 33 South. I'm not going to try to pronounce that Here's my floodplain map I was mentioning earlier. As you can see, even the home that is on the property just to the north is actually in the floodplain. And Chuck can get into how the floodplain stuff goes, and I don't want to dive into that. I'm sure Chuck will handle that for you very well. But here's how you can see where all of this is. It is the 100-year floodplain, and I believe this is the floodway line, which we're not developing within. And you can definitely read that, right? You have these drawings. I'm sure you've seen this. As has been mentioned, we are proposing a gravel surface for the property. The gravel entry drive, which here's the turnaround for the fire department. We work closely with the fire department, make sure everything begins to work and into the place.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, sir.
Since you mentioned that, the gravel is intended for the access way from, or is that the surface where the RVs and boats will be parked as well?
It is both.
Both.
So the requirement by the county in order to run an access drive from Gun Club Road into the property, it needs to be gravel because it is in that floodplain. The rest of the site, gravel makes sense. I mean, there's very few properties, maybe not any in the area. There may be one or two that actually have asphalt for that surface. The other element of that, of not having asphalt in there is, of course, the heat island effect, which goes into increasing temperature of the overall area, etc. Again, these are plans for the purposes of getting through the rezoning. The ASP plans are next. The other acronym plans are after that. Basically, the construction level drawings. I should know those by now, but I don't. The fire department has requested a 20-foot driveway. We've provided a 25-foot. As mentioned, they requested the turnaround. That's also provided. It has been discussed, and the client has agreed to increase on the east side a 4-foot berm plus a 6-foot fence on top of that. We are also providing motion automated lighting for the property, so motion detector, and then on a timer from there. Decrease light pollution. The dump basin, we originally had a 2 by 2 by 6 inch. That was also a concern. We've doubled that in size, 4 by 4 by 10 inch. And that's all I have for the presentation. I think probably majority of your time.
Mr. Olson, which fire department was it that required to you? And maybe some of these are for Molly. Sable Altura? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Olson? Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, you mentioned the reason you use gravel is for heat and so on. I'm also thinking runoff so that the water can go in. But as the water seeps into the ground, which is what we want don't want it running off into whatever. RVs and I'm sure boats have all these fluids that leak out of them. How is that handled? How do you deal with, the oil and the other stuff that drips from these vehicles?
It's a good question. So everything on the property, I mean, there of course is always that chance, just like there are at large parking lots, et cetera. Even asphalt isn't completely impervious. There's always that chance for some of it to go down into the groundwater, and I think that's the question. We are providing a dump station, as mentioned on here, that we can put a liner under that and run that, whether it's piped or through a liner, to the detention water quality facility. Beyond that, we are providing the gravel surface. For one, that's the requirement of the county. Two, that's what helps make the project feasible. and 3, we're already having gravel coming in from the site. We already have to traverse through gravel in order to get to the site, so it's a little silly to go and add extra urban heat to the property when it's not necessary.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending that you do asphalt. I'm just wondering what RV localities such as you're suggesting do with the gravel that has gotten oil and stuff. Do you clean it every 6 years so that you take out the old gravel and put in clean gravel, or do you just leave it there forever? Or I'm just wondering what's done with it.
Sure. I don't know the answer to that. I would say that it's probably easier to go and clean and remediate the gravel than it would be an asphalt that begins to deteriorate over time. One of the things that I did not mention here, but I started to, and then my brain lapsed, thinking of the Broncos and Case Keenum at the moment. But is the dump stations. So in all likelihood, an RV, I don't know how many of you own RVs and boats, but in all likelihood, an RV or boat is going to be dumped at the place, the campsite, right? Because you don't want to haul that weight and decrease your gas, fuel efficiency, et cetera, to get back to the site. Not all RV storage areas actually provide the dump station. This one does, to go and have that ability to clean it off, which I believe is an advantage of this facility. Don't know how many will actually use it because again, they're going to go and dump that beforehand. But that is kind of the reality of it. And we have a 1,000 gallon cistern available at the dump station to help kind of clean, and that's when it was brought up by the neighborhood to the deficient size of the 2 foot by 2 foot by 6 inches. My client said, yeah, I understand that, and I agree with that. Let's give them a little more room so that, we can decrease that spillage and decrease the potential problems.
Is that something that's pumped out, or does it drain somewhere?
That's a really good question, and
I don't have an.
I'm not sure that that I'm the one to answer that, but I would imagine that there's some kind of grease trap element, just like a kitchen would have. And then from there, the clean water would go toward the detention water quality pond.
Molly, is there do you have an answer for that? As far as a RV dump station, what the normal protocol is for cleaning that out, or does it drain somewhere? I sounded at first like Mr. Olson was saying that it would drain to the detention pond.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, but I did receive comments from Tri-County Health, and they would require that system to be designed and reviewed and permitted through them. Okay. And I don't know if there's state involvement with that too, but it can't be approved unless they get the okay.
And is that
they have to approve it.
So that's one of the conditions of approval.
The conditions of approval, no, we don't have that as a condition. It can be added. If you go to your sheet. And that would be further reviewed under the administrative site plan. That's when you get into the nuts and bolts. This is for more zoning. Yeah, it does not have that in there. But if you like to add
I believe it does in the one of them.
Address, yeah. But you wouldn't get the specifics until administrative site plan.
Right.
Yeah. But nothing specific to the design or anything with this application.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you. Molly, do you happen to know, does Tri-County require that the vehicles be purged of the oil and other liquids that they might contain before storage, or is there a requirement from them, or not?
They did not say anything to me about that or specify in their referral letter, but that could be a good question to ask them.
Okay.
Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. Somewhere in the reading, I read, and I'm not sure who this is for, it mentioned trees or landscaping, and I'm wondering where you're going to get the water to get. I mean, once they get started, they're okay, but usually they require quite a bit of water to get them going. So I'm wondering what the. I think it was mentioned you're a landscape architect, so I'm sure you know all about this. And where, what kind of trees and where are they going to be, and where are you going to get the water?
Yes, and thank you. It's certainly a near and dear topic to me. I forgot to mention that would actually be one of the items that we're going above and beyond on this project. The code requires, and I don't know the specifics, of number of trees. Beyond that point, Molly and staff had asked, given that there's a home directly to the north, we'd like to see more trees, and certainly our client has agreed to that and added those. In regards to the irrigation, there are two 2,000-gallon cisterns on site to help provide that water, and that will be continually maintained and refilled. And those two 2,000, I mentioned one 1,000-gallon cistern earlier, and that's for the cleaning off the dump station, but the two 2,000-gallon cisterns are specific for the landscape, and if fire needed to utilize those as well. Those would be handled either, and we'll have to go and get into the details of how, which plants are used. Obviously, I would, and I don't know that we'll actually be working on the landscape on this project, but I would recommend certainly lower water use plants. We do have a riparian area there, so you could make some arguments for some higher water use, but at the end of the day, you probably want to use some plants that are going to do well even after that 2-year minimum establishment period. Granted that, and given that he also will have the cisterns on site, I would hope that the plants will continue to be irrigated beyond that, and I'm sure that's part of Arapahoe County, that the maintenance of those you can't just plant a tree and let it die, right?
Mr. Olson, you at one point said one dump station, and then you said dump stations. So I just want to clarify the number of dump stations.
There is one. If I said two, I apologize.
Well, you just added an S on the end, so I didn't. I wanted to make sure that was clear. How many employees will this have?
I do not believe that the property will be manned, correct? Right. So employee-wise, I imagine it'll be managed by Mr. Patton and whoever he deems to go and help manage that. But it's not, and I think as mentioned, it's not meant to be a major employment facility.
Right. Nor have we argued that. And one of my other questions is, where did you get the name Patton? But now I'm understanding where that
General Patton.
General Patton, yes. So that would be good. Any other questions, concerns? Commissioner Sharp.
I was just curious, and mostly on the landscaping, and you mentioned Arapahoe County, and this may be a question for the county, but I don't see a landscape plan in here as to what kinds of trees, bushes would be planted, and that they would be maintained, and then if one dies, that it does need to be replaced, because often that doesn't happen, and without a specific landscape plan, I don't know what would be planted out there. It could be a variety of things that might not provide screening, or screening in the winter, or those kinds of things. So I'm just curious.
And I'll let Molly finish this, but the plans do go and show trees on them, and as you mentioned, they're not specific to what type of trees those are. They're there to show, hey, with the rezoning, this number of trees needs to be in place. The rest of that comes in the ASP process and there are some notes that are on there as well that are in regards to irrigation and trees.
Just for further clarification, under the specific development plan, that's more of a conceptual, showing screening here, trees here, shrubs here. You don't get into the nuts and bolts until the administrative site plan. That's where the plant schedule comes in. Number of plant species, where they're exactly placed, and going more into how the irrigation system possibly could be set up, and then they could water from there, from on-site with the trucked-in water.
I think that that's an important, the visual impact is important here. So I guess I'm just a little uncomfortable with now not kind of knowing what that might be as part of the approval. I understand that it's done at a separate point in time, but not knowing what that is. I did have a question back to Commissioner Jackson's, so I'm not comfortable with that part of it, but back to Commissioner Jackson's question. So if you've got 400 potential vehicles, which is what I read in here, I think I have that right, and if there's oil or things like that, if there's oil, that in an area that seeps into the ground and there's no sort of remediation for any of that, how is that handled at other facilities when that could seep into the groundwater, et cetera, over a long period of time? That's a lot of vehicles that could have an oil leak or gas leak or something like that when they're sitting out there, for a while. So how's that handled?
I don't know how it is handled in other places. I can tell you, though, that it is a concern overall and not necessarily just with this property. As mentioned, asphalt can have that same deterioration, that same runoff issue. And as we continue to do more low-impact development where we encourage the infiltration of water into the ground, which we should, decreases runoff, et cetera, I think that it's more of a global question and a global problem with society and how our vehicles are handled. And my hope is that over time, vehicles begin to fix that problem themselves, whether it's an RV or just a standard single occupant vehicle. I know I'm not really answering your question, but in terms of gravel versus asphalt, there's not that much of a difference in the coefficient of runoff.
Okay. And if I could, one more question. Can you put up that slide where you had the floodplain?
Yes. There you go.
Yeah. So considering that the floodplain looks like it goes into the development, any potential development, I think directly to the east, there aren't any homes directly to the east. Is that of this? So there would not been, maybe another question for our staff, is there wouldn't be any development, residential development in that floodplain?
I'm going to ask Mr. Haskins to come up and answer questions about the floodplain. But I will say that my understanding was what we're looking at is both the 100-year floodplain and the 500-year floodplain. The 500-year floodplain, if I'm not mistaken, you can develop in.
Okay.
But Mr. Haskins,
what's this
can you come up or Kathy?
Is this the 100-year or the 500-year? This blue.
Chuck's on his way up. I'm going to let him answer it so I don't botch it.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, Board. Chuck Haskins, Engineering Services Division. The question about the floodplain, let me just give you a little bit of history on that. I'm going to show you the existing floodplain. This is the existing floodplain along the west boundary. It's in an X zone here, which is basically out of the floodplain, the FEMA floodplain. Okay, and then the next page should show me the eastern portion of the site. And then this is the same floodplain showing the subject property again in that X zone. These are the existing FEMA maps, okay? In the county's regulations, however, we regulate either the FEMA firm maps or the flood hazard area delineation maps, which are maps produced by urban drainage. So we look at that. And this again is the east section, showing this here is the floodway as was described. That's south of the actual gun club. This is a spill. Cold Creek goes into a spill here and then crosses again Gun Club Road and creates another floodplain area within the adjacent portions of the adjacent property. And let me show you just one more slide here. And this is the...
So, Mr. Haskins, before you move from that one, so directly east of that property where it is blue, would that be, according to county regulations, not be developable for single family? Okay.
They already got developed. I'm not aware of any structures in there, but I'm sure members of the public might be able to attest to that.
Okay.
Somebody comes in today, we wouldn't allow that. Unless the floodplain is modified. The floodplain will likely get modified when a bridge structure goes over Coal Creek, improving Gun Club Road. It's on our transportation plan, but it's not on our CIP, so I mean it's not imminent, okay? But what it'll probably do is channelize and keep most of the flows down here at the creek crossing, not allow that spill to happen, okay? So, one more slide here, apologize. So this is the west portion of the property. So the property has encumbrance of the 100-year floodplain under the FAD study, which will, I don't want to confuse you, but will become the FEMA maps within next year. That study will then be adopted by FEMA and then will be depicted on all the firm maps, okay? But the property has, currently it has floodplain on it, and it does have a 100-year floodplain in portions of the 500-year floodplain, which Commissioner Baker pointed out. But we allow development in the 500. We just don't allow critical facilities in the 500, like a hospital or a fire station or something like that.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Haskins, before you leave, too, there was also made mention of right turn in and right turn out. If with a map up, if you could kind of further delve into that so that we could get a clear picture of what's being proposed there, that'd be helpful.
I'm in the drainage study.
Sorry, yes, I'm sure. I just thought while you were up here.
No, that's fine. Be happy to. See if I can bring up the site plan. Here we go. I think that's going to be the best picture. Gun Club Road is a 2-lane road right now. It's our 2020 projections of traffic are about 9,000 vehicles per day. It may even be higher than that now. We just don't have any actual counts. The property, this type of development doesn't generate a lot of traffic. It generates about 47 vehicles a day, okay, and about 4 in the peak hour. So pretty low volumes. We did hear some public testimony on the difficulty of turning left into the property and turning left out of the subject property, which I can imagine would be very challenging, especially in the peak hours. And there's no auxiliary lanes. There's no left turn decel lanes or anything. So one of the ideas was just to limit turns to right turn only. So if I'm egressing the site, I've got to egress it from the north and take a right into there. If I'm ingressing the site, I have to come from the north and take this right. If I'm exiting the site, I have to take this right. There will not be any raised median or anything, so it'll only be signed as right turns only. That's not 100% foolproof, as everyone knows, but we thought since it's low volumes and there isn't a provisions for left turns, that we would just restrict it to right in, right out, and I think the applicant's comfortable with that. I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
And
Mr. Conti.
should someone need to come from a direction that's not accommodated by the right turn in and right turn out, are they expected to U-turn somewhere, or is that going to be problematic for other properties in the region?
That's the problem with right turn only access, is they sometimes produce illegal U-turns. So that's unfortunately the only way you can address that is with enforcement. So.
Any other questions for Mr.
The only other option would be is to require them to install a left turn lane as a result of this, but they don't really meet warrants for that requirement. We use CDOT requirements for auxiliary lanes, and because there's only 4 turning movements in the peak hour, that's not sufficient to warrant that improvement.
Is this a state-controlled highway at this point? Is this
No,
Colorado
this is
30?
this is county's road at this point. It will ultimately be a 4-lane road, okay? And the biggest challenge is going to be improving it across Coal Creek.
Mm-hmm.
We're not only going to have to put a very large culvert, a bridge structure, but we're going to have to channelize upstream of that so that we can eliminate that split flow condition that I showed you in the other graphics.
And that is when it would affect the floodplain.
Yes.
The floodplain could
then we can
about
remodel the floodplain and get it off of these parcels that are going to be in the FEMA floodplain here in the next year or so.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Haskins? No. Commissioner Conti.
Make certain that I'm clear and on the record. So it doesn't meet the warrants for a left turn lane, even if the applicant wanted to pay to install said left turn lane and widen the road to accommodate that. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's generally not good engineering practice to require an improvement that doesn't meet warrants for it. So you can create some operational issues if you start putting in improvements that are unwarranted. discussions with our traffic operations folks, they weren't comfortable doing that without it meeting warrants. And you need 25 turning vehicles to meet the warrant. So 4 is quite off that. If it was a little closer, we might have some type of reason for doing that.
Okay, just to confirm, I have in my notes, and maybe I misheard or misunderstood, 47 vehicles in and out per day. Is that incorrect? Or was that 4 to 7?
47 daily traffic.
Okay.
4 in the peak hour. So 4 to 5, 4:30 to 5:30, 7 to 8, that type of stuff.
And that number in the peak hour is what needs to be higher in order to meet the
It has to be
warrants.
at least 25.
At least 25. Okay. So my statement to you was correct, and that it does not meet, because the peak hour traffic is not high enough, it does not meet the warrants. Therefore, you're not comfortable recommending that even if the client wanted to pay to enlarge the road to accommodate a left turn, and enough means to allow traffic that is waiting to turn into the property, that it does not meet warrants. Therefore, you could not even in good conscience recommend it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskins? If not, thank you, Mr. Haskins. Any other questions for Mr. Olson? Commissioner Sharp.
Just have one more, Mr. Olson, and that's, can you talk about the fence? You said there's going to be a berm with a fence on top. Tell me what kind of fence, because I thought I read in here that it was going to be a not a screening fence, just a metal fence or whatever you call them.
The property is planned for, and this part's going to be fuzzy on me, but for the most part, they're all cedar, so they're all opaque. You can't see through them. And they're all 6 foot in height. There's one that's more than 6 foot. There's an 8-foot one, and that is on the east side. Thank you. Help. I'm getting help.
Okay.
Phoned a friend.
Okay. But it's not a see-through fence. It's a...
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Privacy
Thank
fence.
you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Olson? I know I have some questions for Molly that I would like to ask, but any other questions for Mr. Olson? Thank you, Mr. Olson. And just a reminder, we do have Mr. Patton here as well, so if there's any questions for the owner. Molly, my question pertains to the Planning Committee's meeting on the 16th of January. There were a number of reasons that they voted 4-2 to deny this application. Isn't that correct?
They had 4 findings listed, and in my presentation I just combined.
Okay.
They not compatible.
One of those was the fact that the comp plan, and I believe, let me look at page 78.
Mm-hmm.
On the 78, I'm getting there. I noticed in the comprehensive plan, it says the Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan designates this site as employment, quote. Employment centers include workplaces such as research and development offices, major service and office center complexes, warehousing and light industrial use, and major educational facilities. The applicant's proposal for outdoor storage meets the direction provided by the comp plan for employment areas, complies with the following goals and policies of the comp plan: encourage urban development to locate in the designated growth areas, and it promotes and supports employment and commercial development in growth areas. So I wanted to ask about that first, and then there's some other questions I have to ask about their Planning Commission. But tell me a little bit more about the comp plan designating this site as employment.
Yes, under our code it does mention that, and there's extremes. You have the offices with a lot of people, And then they're definitely on the other range of the lower end. Chris Patton, the applicant, would be on site, possibly other employees in the future. So it is definitely on the low end of that. But we felt it qualified as an employment, not a big employment center, but there was employment involved. Now it is also under the Aurora's E470, which does encourage outdoor storage in that area.
Okay. And then there could be people coming to water the trees and things like that, maintain the fence.
Right.
Maybe clean or scoop up contaminated gravel if that's determined to be needed, or pumping out the dump station, things like that. That's what
the maintenance of the site. And Mr. Patton has indicated that he would be there at least a minimum once a day. It could increase depending on, timing of the year, the circumstances, how many vehicles are out there.
Okay. The Planning Commission also cited safety concerns with the traffic on Gun Club, but it seemed from your report that the designation of the right in only and right out only satisfied that particular
Correct.
issue with the Planning Commission. And then the other things that they mentioned is that impact on neighbors and the fact that it was out of character with the neighborhood. But I've driven by there a number of times, and just from the diagram, the closest neighbor is the house to the north.
Right. And when that redevelops, might not be a residential development there. It is set back over 300 feet from the South Gun Club Road, which provides quite a bit of relief, and with landscaping and fencing that be put up, felt it would be compatible with the surrounding land uses.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Any other questions for Ms. Larson or Kild?
Mr. Sharp, did we address the landscaping for you, or do you want me to go into any more detail?
All right. What kind of assurances, I guess, is it just testimony here, or, that if this were to go forward, that there would be adequate landscaping, screening, that kind of thing? Because without a plan that's approved, I don't know.
I know the discomfort, what you're feeling. And with the specific development plan, again, it's just more conceptual, but we try to indicate where the buffering will occur. They have indicated they would alternate deciduous and evergreen trees. Now, when it comes in for the administrative site plan, I am a landscape architect, so I'm aware of what plants are adequate and at what locations and what the growth rates and things like that. It probably wouldn't be a good idea to go into specifying distances or every so many feet, because you don't know what species you're going to be putting in at this time. So I think if there's a buffer, they're trying to show some kind of landscaping around, definitely on the three sides, the north, south, and the east, that should be sufficient at this time, and then we can go into more detail based on that design concept that they're going to do that.
So I guess if this goes forward, my just assurance is that there would be, and that there is, that the county would be following up to make sure that the landscaping continued to thrive, and that kind of thing, because there are certain kinds of, as you know better than I, trees or bushes that will provide screening, and then some that won't. Mm-hmm. And evergreens are there. Anything that's evergreen is going to be there even in the winter. But then there are others that they'll lose their leaves and they won't provide any screening.
Right.
in the
And
winter
as a
time.
condition of approval, there is a condition that they maintain the landscaping. And if a plant dies, they will have to replace it.
Okay.
And that is our zoning enforcement officers will be looking. So, yeah.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you. Just so I have a clear picture, we're talking about the trees being on the outside of the fencing.
Yes.
Towards the neighbors and other
Right.
folks
Yeah.
passing by in the fence, then on the inside, correct?
Right.
Just wanted to confirm that.
Any other questions for Molly? Thank you, Molly.
You're welcome.
I am going to open up the public comment period, and I do have the list of people that signed in. There are a couple of rules I want to explain about the public comment period. You'll be asked to come up to the podium and use the microphone, adjust it so that it's comfortable for you and can be heard. You'll be given 3 minutes to say your piece, and you'll have to watch the yellow and red light up here on the podium, just in front of the podium. And you'll be given 3 minutes, like I said, and when you're down to 30 seconds, the yellow light comes on. When the red light comes on, you've used your 3 minutes, and we ask you to wrap up at that time. Everyone who comes forward will need to tell us their name and their address for the record. So on the first place here, I have Richard Rader. And it says he would like to speak against this proposal. Mr. Rader, welcome, and your name and address, please.
Well, happy to be here, and welcome all of you commissioners. I reside in Thunderbird Estates, located in unincorporated Arapahoe County at 71 North Algonquin Street, Aurora, 80018.
Thank you.
And I come before you today regarding a proposed South Gun Club RV Storage Specific Development Plan. I was able to learn firsthand the responsibility of the county commissioners and planning commissioners for the future of Arapahoe County citizens. One of the visions of Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan is, I quote, treat residents fairly in the process of making land use decisions. Developers have one goal in mind: develop projects to make money. Arapahoe County taxpayers wish to continue to experience area development that meets Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan vision and E470 corridor zone that states enhanced quality of life. On December 5th, 2017, RV Storage PDP was presented to the planning commissioners, and the commissioners had many questions and suggestions for the developer. And they include the entrance be paved to the project and wider than the developer has proposed. The screen yard fencing was suggested and evidently was accepted by the developer, which is great. The storage lot area surface should not be road base. We're concerned that we're not concerned with other storage surfaces for other storage places. We're concerned about this place. And asphalt allows runoff better than road base. The lot surface slope to drain surface water runoff with any of the contaminants that would come from the vehicles to the parking lot to first enter an oil water separator unit before entering the required detention pond. The RV dump station holding tank should be large enough to accommodate a minimum of 80% of the maximum planned vehicles. The portable toilet just isn't acceptable, a porta potty. A permanent toilet and personal washing facility should be located at the dump station area. And also we suggested a 24-hour emergency phone night light program so that people could locate the site manager at any time. Developers' response to the commissioner questions and suggestions led to a vote to continue the hearing till Tuesday, January 16th. At the hearing on January 16th, the developer did not attempt to include any of the planning commissioner's previous suggestions Therefore, a vote was taken by the commissioners, and the RV storage PDP was denied on a vote of 4-2. Property is currently zoned A2 and a total of 10 acres. The developer has requested the property to be rezoned to mixed-use PDP to accommodate their proposed outdoor storage.
I need you to wrap up when you can.
I am. The zoning should not be changed. So I ask the county commissioners to support area residents and your planning commissioners to please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. Next on the list, I have Bonnie Rader. And if you'll come forward and remember, we need your name and address for the record.
Thank you for this opportunity to comment to you. My name is Bonnie Rader. I live at 71 Algonquin Street, Aurora, Colorado, 80018, and I live in Thunderbird Estates just to the north of this facility. Unincorporated Arapahoe County taxpayers aspire to experience development in the area that meet and maintain E470 zone and Arapahoe County comprehensive plan goals that enhance our property values and our quality of life. The E470 influence corridor zone requires that the amenities provided by the proposed plan enhance the life in the area. The amenities offered by this developer are virtually non-existent. This plan will not enhance the quality of life in the area. More desirable businesses will not want to be located next to an RV storage facility, especially one that will have wooden or wire fencing, no buildings, no water, a dump station, and will be unmanned. We believe that this application should be denied for the following reasons. Although the project may be classified as commercial, it's really light industrial and will only promote more of the same type of light industrial businesses instead of more desirable development that could provide needed services to our surrounding community. The applicant disregards Arapahoe County zoning code and comprehensive plan. This proposed project is disregarding the current zoning by requesting a different zoning in order to accommodate and allow the project instead of adopting the project to the current zoning. This proposal does not meet the criteria for E470 Buckley Zone District high-quality development. The developer proposes there will be no buildings on site, no water or sewer. Property will be enclosed by a wooden fence. The property is within the East City of Aurora's E470 Corridor Zone District, Buckley Research and Development Area. Section 9 of the E470 Permitted and Conditional Uses specifically emphasizes high-quality development for the area. This proposal does not meet the employment requirement. This facility will be unmanned and contain no buildings. The Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan designates this site as employment, which includes research and development facilities, major service and office center complexes, major education facilities, and warehousing. This property is located in a very shallow area of groundwater supply in a floodplain. If proposed, this site does not take more cautionary steps to control surface runoff and septic controls, negative impacts to Coal Creek, and the 100-year floodplain could be considerable. This storage site will have no on-site manager, employees to monitor the septic system and assure that it is pumped as needed. The developer must meet the requirements of Tri-County Health and install a holding tank or a vault. Septic is a liquid, solid, and semi-solid material that results from wastewater treatment in a septic tank, and it must be pumped, hauled, treated, and disposed of properly in a legal disposal site. The holding tank must be carefully engineered to assure the tank is not overwhelmed by groundwater or flood impacts. The developer is not planning to use a durable product for the parking lot, and as such is asphalt and concrete. Also, we would appreciate it if they would think about having their detention ponds lined so that whatever runs into the detention pond doesn't flow down into the groundwater and perhaps impact neighborhood wells.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person who signed up to speak, again against, is Emily Disler. And if you state your name and address for the record.
I'm Emily Disler, and I live at 31 North Algonquin Road in Thunderbird Estates. And the issue I want to speak to is it could be the most beautiful RV place in the world. And also, I know it's not going to increase traffic hugely. We already have plenty of traffic, as you probably heard, 9,000 vehicles a day. And the problem is, it's a narrow, dangerous road, and road rage affects just about every single driver on that road because they're commuting. And there's nothing worse than a commuter going to work, unless it's a commuter coming home who wants to get home and sit in front of the TV and have his beer. A lot of them aren't even waiting that long because I'm picking up the trash on the road, and believe me, there is a lot of beer drinking and vodka drinking going on because I pick this all up. But I want to point out that if they make this rule about the egress, okay, they may say, I want to go north, so they'll go south for only a quarter of a mile down to Alameda Road, and they will drive through Thunderbird Estates to get themselves up by my house that comes out at Ellsworth, to get themselves going in the proper direction. And the same thing the other direction. They're going to come down, and they will have to they'll go to Alameda, they'll drive through Thunderbird Estates to get themselves oriented. And I'm sorry, there's nothing that creates more road rage than a horse trailer and an RV. People are so rude to me. I live there. I have a horse trailer, and believe me, I am scared to death. The speed limit is merely a suggestion, 45 miles an hour. I don't think very many people go 45, and I do, and I get a lot of fish shaking and people passing me. There is no safe shoulder if you need to hit the ditch. My poor mailman told me a scary story. Also, mail trucks create road rage for some reason, and he was passed on that horrible section of Gun Club where this facility is going to be located, and an angry person passed. Oncoming car was coming, the mail truck, and the oncoming car had to hit the ditch. Now, if you know anything about the sides of Gun Club Road in that area, they are horrible. I use an RV to go pick up the trash because I'm not strong enough to carry all that trash out, and I go 1 mile an hour, and I'm like this, carefully going along the borrow pit. There is no shoulder to that road. You never see a recreational bicyclist on that road because they'd be killed. It is a terrible road, and it's not that I object to the amount of traffic it's going to add. It's not that significant. It's the fact that it's not if an accident will occur, it's when.
Thank you very much. Next person I have is Tom Kraus, who would like to speak against the applicant. Thank you. And if you just keep your eye on the lights up here, right up here, closest to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my testimony. I'm Tom Kraus. I live at 31 North Algonquian Street. The fence that I think that they're proposing is cedar, unless I'm wrong. That's what they initially proposed. If you just drive through Aurora, you'll see what happens to cedar fence, which is not maintained. We asked that some kind of vinyl fence be put up there. They also talk about having landscaping, for which they're going to have a cistern, a collecting system. There's not enough water that comes down in our area that's going to be able to fill up that cistern. So that they have a plan for bringing in water and having to be able to maintain the trees or whatever they're going to have as landscaping. They want to do this as cheaply as possible. Otherwise, it's not economically feasible. And if that's their outlook now, I suspect that they're not going to really be maintaining that very well. The gravel should be going, or allows the waste to go into the groundwater, and an oil water separating system would be feasible if they had asphalt. They talk about having the the dump system, they go from 2 foot by 2 foot they doubled it to 4 foot by 4 foot, which is almost nothing. Every wastewater system I've ever seen has it at least as big as the RV that's going to be there, and has it maintained so it's draining into the system. And then they have a hose that you wash the system down with, but they have no provision for a hose there. As well, he talks about not dumping there. I'm an RV owner, and if you don't keep your water in there, have it shaken up by your trip back home before you're done, then it doesn't allow for a complete emptying, and the next thing you know, you have to have your RV system rotor out. So the recommendation is you keep your water in your system and dump it where you're going to leave your RV. I hope you vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kraus. The next person I have is the owner, Chris Patton, but said no, did not want to speak. Is that still correct? Okay. Next person on the list is Barry Patton. Did you want to speak, sir? If you'd like to speak, then come forward to the microphone. Okay. Bill Branowitzer?
Yes, sir. May I say a few words?
Please come forward to the microphone. And again, the same rules. If you state your name and address for the record, and keep your eye on the lights.
Bill Branowitzer, 301 Gun Club Road. And just a few comments, please, on the cisterns, water for use in the landscaping. A cistern, like the other gentleman said, there's not enough water available to support any landscaping. Number two, the traffic is a definite problem. There are more than 47 vehicles per hour there. That must be based on an old survey. And number three, turning left and right into that RV facility would be cumbersome. And the third point would be the runoff from the vehicles, the chemicals and everything. You need a place to wash that down. You need an asphalt. If you use gravel, it's going to soak right into the soil, and being a floodplain, that's going to run off into the water system. You need some sort of way to curb that. And as the other gentleman brought up, the RV, as a former RV owner, you need water in a dump station. You have to have water. You just can't leave that excrement laying on the ground. It needs to be flushed down. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, those are all of the folks that we had signed up to talk. If there are any other citizens that would like to address the Board of County Commissioners, please come forward. And same rules apply. Please give us your name and address for the record, and keep your eye on the yellow and red lights in front of me.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Margie Sobey, and I live at 1403 South Addison Court in the city of Aurora. I'm president of MCGC Neighbors, a registered neighborhood association for Murphy Creek and other communities along Gun Club Road. I'm speaking today about this proposed Gun Club self-storage, RV storage, I won't go into detail about my reasons for opposing this project because I already detailed them when I spoke against this at the Planning Commission hearing on January 16th, and my remarks are already a part of the public record. What I would like to do instead is to use the analogy of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I'm sure that much research, discussion, vision, time, and planning went into the current comprehensive plan and the current zoning to ensure quality development through Arapahoe County, including the Eastern Plains where this project is proposed. The zoning for this area is not really conducive to RVs, So in order to fit this square peg into the round hole, rezoning of the area is being requested, which is just the first tear into the fabric of that area. Changing the zoning still doesn't allow the square peg to fit into the round hole, so conditions must be placed on the project. Conditions that would not be necessary if the project was a good fit in the proposed location. The most notable condition to me is the one that would restrict the facility to right in and right out turning movements to South Gun Club Road. During the Planning Commission hearing, in my opinion, the presenter for the applicant was just a little bit cavalier about the traffic concerns that were expressed. Anyone who travels that stretch of Gun Club Road knows that the traffic is bad, the road is narrow, potholes make it difficult to navigate, and people are impatient. RVs can be awkward to drive, and especially if one only drives them a few times a year. I don't believe that right in and right out turns will adequately address the issue. And if RVs are attempting U-turns on that 2-lane road, that's not going to be good for anyone, and so they probably will end up in Thunderbird Estates. Most of the people who live closest already live on acreage properties and store their RVs on their own land, so they most likely won't even use this facility. And I noticed a statement in the board summary report that said, if the proposed SDP is approved, it may improve quality of life by providing a land use desired by the public. I immediately thought that was overreaching a little bit in an attempt to fit the square peg into the round hole. If you take your RV on a camping trip, that most likely improves your quality of life while you're vacationing, but the mere act of parking a vehicle does not improve your quality of life. And in my opinion, improving the convenience of those who live outside of Thunderbird Estates it's not worth the negative impacts to the people who are actually going to have to live across the street from this project. And regarding the property tax revenue, I'm sure the county will see some increased tax revenue, but I don't know how much based on the fact that the property is going to be improved to have a fence, a potential mosquito problem, a dump station, parked vehicles, and a metal gate. Again, this seems to be overreaching. And finally, there's another facility being built just south of the current facility on Jewel, and this will have spaces for 1,300 RVs. So I think that takes care of the need for the public. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Just appreciate it. Are there any other citizens in the audience that wanted to address the Board of County Commissioners on this issue? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. And the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds, and the red light means you're out of time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. I'm Robert Fan. I live at 4632 East Weaver Place. I am not here on behalf of the gun club, but I have been a member for about 15 years now. First, Commissioner Sharp, I got to vote for you a handful of years ago, so thank you. Commissioner Conti, Commissioner Jackson, thank you very much for your concern on runoff, water concerns, and stuff of that sort. I have 3 daughters, and the environment is very important to me. First and foremost, the dump station, that's a big hole in the ground. They're going to put waste. It is in a floodplain. My concern is what's going to happen when water overwhelms this and washes it downstream. So there has been no plans for containment if it has been overwhelmed, and that is a big concern. I was an employee over at Cherry Creek State Park for a while, and there was a reason why we couldn't have cisterns and dump stations there without having lockable lids, and nobody seems to, or the planners haven't thought of that, I guess. My other concern is the grease and fuel, everything from a boat and stuff like that rushing off. They said that they're using asphalt for heat issues, but he also brought up cost. It's not feasible to have asphalt. Asphalt gives us an opportunity to catch that runoff, and using an oil separator or some other methods prevent that from going into our rivers, streams, and creeks. Sorry, I'm a standard millennial. I was taking down notes while everybody else was talking and then putting them on my phone and hoping it didn't go dark when I was talking. As far as traffic, it's horrible. Let me see if I can use this. So right to the south here, there's a very large hill. It comes down, it goes across Coal Creek, Your first left's the gun club. Your next left is going to be this proposed storage area. A standard camper weighs roughly 5,000 pounds, going 45 miles an hour. Your big diesel pusher RVs that everybody sees, those things can weigh on excess of 20,000 pounds. 20,000 pounds coming down a hill at 45 miles an hour, knowing that they can't go left. But if they can't go left, they're going to go either into Thunderbird Estates, they're going to go up to 6th Avenue. And it's going to happen. We saw it with the development of, I believe it's Montebella off of Orchard and Quebec. It's a big neighborhood there. They even put like this triangle thing that made you have to go and make a long turn to go left. If you drive on Orchard at 5 p.m., you're going to see cars turning left there, even though you're not supposed to. Why? Because they don't want to drive all the way down the street, go into King Soopers, turn around, come the other way. That is going to cause car wrecks. And if you have a 20,000-pound vehicle, that's going to cause a fatality. There is another note that there is no shoulders there. There's no, oh crap, move off to the side and avoid somebody. You're creaming somebody or you're going into a ditch. I don't know. And they said they're going to offset at 300 feet. I'm a soccer coach. My girls run 300 feet about 40 times each day. It's not an offset. Nobody wants to see an RV park. Nobody wants to live by an RV park. I know there's a home to the north, but we're the home to the south. We shoot trap there. We talk there. We have friends there. And we don't want to see RVs. And it doesn't fit. It's just not compatible. I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you so very much for hearing us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens that would like to address the Board of County Commissioners on this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the commissioners if there's any discussion, comments. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I think we should just clarify the water question. And are you going to be purchasing water to put in those cisterns, or how's that going to work?
I do have a few things that I can answer some questions if
please.
I'll start with the first one. The intention was never for the cisterns to be filled by rainwater. These cisterns will be filled up. As mentioned, there are two 2,000-gallon cisterns for the landscape to give you a feel for how much water is needed. Fortunately, I'm a landscape architect, right? So trees generally need 3 to 4 gallons per hour. And you do those 2 to 3 times a week. If we have 4,000 gallons, that's 1,000 trees. We don't have 1,000 trees on the site. So the point is that those will go and be regularly filled. And as mentioned, somebody will be coming onto the site intermittently to go and check on that. There was also a comment about porta potties. This comment is almost becoming a running joke because we see this thing over and over again. We have never once recommended or proposed that porta potties would be on the site, nor are we today. We will not have porta potties on the site. Tri-County Health requirements regarding Arapahoe County and Tri-County Health. We're not asking for anything out of the regulations. We're planning to meet all codes, all regulations of Tri-County Health. So when those standards are met, the health, safety, et cetera, is protected. I believe that we do have good standards in Arapahoe County, and I believe the Tri-County Health does as well. There was a comment in this previous citizen comment section about currently there are RVs stored on the land, on the properties in Thunderbird Estates. And this provides that opportunity to have those not stored on their homes, which can be unsightly for their neighbors, whether it's a convenience thing or not. I actually am a board member and president of one HOA and a board member of second HOA. And we do not allow RVs, as most HOAs do not allow RVs to be on individual properties because it is an eyesore. In terms of the right in, right out, that gets brought up a lot. That wasn't something we proposed either. I mean, we don't think it's needed. As Chuck had mentioned, 4 trips during the peak hour is not enough to go and really warrant that. And I personally, if it were me, I'd say I don't want the right in, right out, because I don't disagree with citizens and the neighbors in that people are going to abuse it. People abuse traffic laws and et cetera all the time. Some will follow it, and as mentioned, will get frustrated. But I don't think that that's something that needs to be on the property, and it's not something that we're requesting. Let's see here. Is this my time to kind of do a kind of a final closing statement as well? I'm not a millennial, but I'm pretty darn close to it, so I do have it on my phone. So it's funny you brought that up. You all have a pretty difficult choice today because you have 2 recommending bodies that basically recommend planning items for you. Your staff, which is your team of experts at Arapahoe County, who is recommending approval with conditions on this property. And then you also have Planning Commission that has recommended denial of the property. I want to just give you a few words of, I don't want to say caution, because I'm going to caveat this by mentioning again that my client is not the owner of the property. He is the would-be developer of the property. If you don't mind me reading through this real quick. It's not too long. The gravity of this discussion is beyond a typical rezoning hearing, given the many constraints of the property: floodplain, C470, gun club to the south. What else? Those are pretty big ones. The decision today could be a massive devaluation of the property itself. Effectively, it could be in that consideration and worry of a takings, which you all may be familiar with. Rule number 1 of the Supreme Court takings is where the landowner has been denied all economic viable use of the land. As mentioned in the opening slides, this project has endured a long process, of which resulted in staff recommendation for approval, only to be dragged through 2 Planning Commission hearings. Each of the hearings were dominated in statements and questions directing the bias of a single planning commissioner, who happens to be here today, and who lives in the nearby Thunderbird Estates. Back to the kind of the takings question. Toward the conclusion of the second Planning Commission hearing, this planning commissioner made the statement, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm sure you can go and watch back the video, that this property has its challenges, and by denying this rezone, perhaps we are saying that there are no good uses for the property, and it should be left vacant. Prior to the hearing, this commissioner, and after, or actually he didn't write this, his spouse wrote this, a letter to the Planning Commission stating the objection to the use. Following the hearing, we have received multiple letters from this same residence, as well as his presence today. And I'm noting this because I want to be clear that this project and decision before you today is unusual. I believe that this commissioner is correct in the denial of the rezone will be removing the economical viable use of the property. This may sound great to neighbors who would like to see differing uses denied in their backyards. However, it is a direct violation of Supreme Court rulings on takings.
I think Commissioner Conti had a question.
Yes, my question is to get clarity. I wanted to make sure. You talked about someone being there on a daily basis, at least one time a day. What is the planned duration of time that person will be on site? Is this going to be for an hour, for 10 minutes, for 5 hours? How long, and what are the planned operation?
I believe that Molly had mentioned that, and I actually did not mention that because I was unclear on how that logistically would work. But I defer to Chris on that question because I don't know. I mean, the presumption is that they would be on site to check water levels, check vegetation, check for debris, trash, those kind of things. So their duration could greatly vary. Is there anything you want to add to that, Chris?
I'll be there on a daily basis, checking.
You'll have to come up if you want to be on the record. And again, if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Chris Patton, 1995 Candle Glow Street. So I'll be there on a daily basis. Tenants have questions. They cover their RVs in the winter times, and I'll be there to look out for the facility, make sure that there's nothing wrong with tenant vehicles. I mean, I know that there's been questions with the surface that I'm using, and if there's a pothole on the property, I'll be taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of. Like John said, checking water levels for vegetation, also for the dump station, just maintaining daily operations, signing tenant leases, that sort of thing.
Commissioner Conti.
So thank you for being here and for your willingness to answer a few questions. So is this going to be a scheduled hours that you will be there on a daily basis, or how would-be clients going to know when you would be there in order to be able to sign a lease?
There's a question about being able to contact me in the event of emergency. I mean, definitely if the software and the program I'm using allows a tenant to come up and push a button on the keypad when you enter the property that will automatically ping me and notify me, and they can talk through that to me, or they're able to call me as well. But there is no scheduled hours. It will be, kind of at my discretion. I mean, if I have someone who needs something, or say there's an issue on the property, they can't access a gate or, anything like that, I'll definitely, be out there right away. But there is no scheduled time for me on the property. It'll be as I see fit.
Okay. So is someone going to via a website or some other way going to contact you to say, I would like to sign a lease and meet you at the property at X hour, or how is that going to work?
Yes, ma'am. I will have a website set up with that option. They can either sign it online or they can sign it in person. I'm probably going to push more to sign it in person. But whenever anyone needs to meet me, they can definitely contact me, and I will go to the property.
Also, thank you for that. Also, the assertion was made that the dump station was not going to be lined. Is that correct?
Well, something we talked about yesterday was the potential for contaminants and the dump station area. I thought of yesterday, and depending on what engineering says with the county, I'm willing to put a liner underneath the dump area and take it all the way back to the detention facility, however they see fit in developing that, or whatever they think is the best possible way to deal with any contaminants that may be spilled.
Mr. Patton, I believe that that's Tri-County Health Department that will
yes, sir.
Be the governing authority on the dumping station, if I'm not mistaken.
And it is clear that you're not planning on having any kind of running water if something, RVs would need to be cleaned, or spills would need to be cleaned up, or gravel would need to be cleaned off, or anything like that. There's no running water on the property. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. There will not be running water. Can I clarify real quick? There's not running water, but there will be a hose connection to the 1,000-gallon cistern to go and clean off.
And that was my question. There's two 2,000-gallon cisterns for landscape watering, and one 1,000-gallon cistern specifically dedicated to the adding of water to the dumping station. Correct? And I'm getting nodding heads.
That's
for
correct.
The record. Okay.
Do we have Tri-County here today?
I don't believe we do.
From Tri-County? No. Pity.
Any other questions for anyone? Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for your patience with me trying to read off my phone. It's a challenge of mine for as a near millennial, I guess. I think that I can read off my phone and I won't get nervous, but it doesn't happen that way. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I've closed the public comment. I'm sorry. Isn't that right? I'm not allowed to take any more public comments. I can reopen.
You have the discretion if you are inclined, if you feel here.
Come forward. We'll give everyone. This is the last shot, though. So public comment needs to be reopened or not? Okay, hang on just a second. I'm reopening the public comment period.
Bill Branowitz, your one question. I have heard all this talk about 2,000-gallon cistern, 2,000-gallon cistern, a 1,000-gallon cistern. Where are you going to get the water?
Thank you, Mr. Bren. One more time, Mr. Olson, because I thought you were pretty clear last time. This water will be trucked in, will be brought in, specifically added to the cisterns. It's not natural water being collected on site. It's water being trucked in specifically for those purposes. That's what I understood. I just need you to clarify that.
That is correct.
Very good. Closing the public comment period. Any comments, question, or discussion among the county commissioners? One question from Commissioner Conti.
Yeah, I guess, and I guess maybe I should have confirmed this when I had him up here, and I don't know if he wants to come back, but I guess, is it true that there's going to be no buildings on the site? Therefore, if you're encouraging someone to come and sign the lease in person, are you going to be doing it on the hood of their car, or?
Inside the RV, possibly? Or the boat?
It could be done at, on the hood of a car. There's not going to be any buildings on the site.
So where are you planning on keeping all the records for your business? Is that just going to be kept at your residence?
Yes, ma'am.
Low budget operation, eh? Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussions or questions? I will offer the opinion that I think that the berming and the planting of trees around, mostly on the east side, and the fact that the eastern half of this property is being kept as open space does a lot to mitigate the impact of this site for the residents. I was also encouraged to hear that the currently vacant property on the east side of Gun Club Road probably won't be developed because of the floodplain. So there's very little chance that of any development coming in. And if there is, if it was done after this particular RV storage area, if it's approved today, the residents would know it was there and they would be purchasing their home knowing that that site was there. I was encouraged by the fact that we were able to clarify the fact that water will be available for both washing out the dump station. And again, I'm not a RV owner, a boat owner. I don't know what that is, but dump station makes it pretty clear to me that you'd be like dumping human waste. And I think maybe that contributed to the confusion about the porta potties. Basically that the RVs have porta potties in them, or the boats, I assume, have a way that if you're out on water and you need to use the restroom, that you don't have to go in and use the restroom. I don't know how that works.
My yacht does have bathrooms.
Do you want to? Anybody come in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to the comments, I think that the person that's requesting this change and the staff that has been involved have addressed many of my concerns. I think the important thing is, and one of the issues that I'm very much concerned about, is the manning or having an ability to have people readily available to come to the site in the event of emergency or in the event of a client issue that may arise, or whatever kind of disaster may create a hazard at the site. And that's the only issue that I'm really concerned about in terms of supporting this project. And I think maybe we need to have a protocol developed by the owner and to address how those contacts and procedures would be administered. And I know that issue will not come up today anyway. It'll come up when we look at the final plan. That's my primary concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sharp.
I just wanted to say that for me, changing the zoning on a property is there's a high standard for me to want to change the zoning. And my concern with this particular change is that when we talk about enhancing the quality of life, I don't necessarily think that it does. And then it doesn't meet the comp plan, which I think is a guide for our the areas that we have. And I know that we have a lot of citizens that work on our comp plans, and it's a lot of public comment on comprehensive plans to make sure that they are compatible with the area that they are on, because we have a big county and they're different. Some of our county is more developed and some of it's more rural. So I won't be supporting the zoning change here in this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Conti.
Well, I'm truly sorry that we don't have a member of Tri-County Health here today, because I would very much like to learn more about what their requirements are going to be, especially on this dump station. I'd like to get more clarity about exactly what's going to be dumped, not being a RV or camper owner myself, and are they going to be requiring that it's to be lined, or is that requirement not there? If there are oil or gas or other sediments that are coming in, what is the plan to protect this runoff area and so forth? I myself have concerns about simply a gravel surface, because rainwaters do occasionally come. And when they come, they have a tendency to saturate the ground and make it very likely that when you've got very heavy vehicles sitting there, that they're going to start indenting in and creating dents and ruts and so forth, I believe, in the surface if we simply have a gravel. I know I've owned property before where we had a gravel driveway, and I know the amount of rutting that happens after rains, when cars drive over it, and that's just cars. That's certainly not RVs, with a considerable amount more weight. So I, again, would very much like the opportunity to hear from Tri-County Health before we weigh in on this.
Duly noted. And I'm going to look to the BOCC administration. In the back of the room, I have two dates, April 10th and April 17th, that are open. And I'd like to make a motion to continue this to a date certain. And that will give us an opportunity to hear from Tri-County Health Department about the standard practice for RVs RV parks and RV storage facilities. I'm just looking to see which of those two dates might be the best. Commissioner Holman?
I'll second that motion.
Okay,
until we have a date certain.
April 10th. In the case of Z17-002 South Gun Club RV Storage Specific Development Plan, I move to continue to 10 April 2018 at 9:30 a.m. at this same location to obtain additional information and to further consider the information presented.
I'll second that motion.
So the motion was made by Commissioner Baker and seconded by Commissioner Holland. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Then this motion has been, or this action has been continued. Are there any public, any commissioner comments this morning?
No, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Conti.
Yes, I'd just like to say on the record that I very much enjoyed hearing on the radio this morning a commissioner from Douglas County talking about the proactive things that they are doing in Douglas County to address mental illness in conjunction with their law enforcement officers, and in the hopes that this can help reduce a lot of the violence that we're seeing when people are suffering from mental illness. And I very much look forward to the time that we will also be consulting with Douglas County representatives to learn more about this and the ways that we might be able to adopt this practice here in Arapahoe County. And I'd just like to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conti. Any other comments? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
I mean, I thought we were going to continue the beginning. Yeah. And then when we got started,
my computer died at the end there. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Right.